We have 22 players attempting the quiz, 23 now. And Ma'am Rajalakshmi is leading. We have Shweta Suman leading the quiz now. Performance. Good participants. As of now, we have Sir Indulkar leading the performance, followed by Ms. Gracie, Thank you, participants. Before I close the quiz, we have quite a few participants leading the quiz. The ones who are in the top 5 positions are Siddhi K, Mr. Pranav Indulkar, Aksa, Gracie, Shweta Suman, Shauri Hebel. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Ending the quiz now. So, participants, wasn't it interesting? So, MCQs are an interesting, challenging, and a powerful tool to assess students' learning. And if we are able to design MCQs which can test our students beyond knowledge and understanding, it is going to be a real value add to our, that is, teachers' testing skills. So, the learning outcomes for today's workshop is, you already know, you have seen learning outcomes of the workshop. So, it is said what we learn to do, we learn by doing it. And at KKC, we are strong advocates of active engagement of participants in the process of learning. And thus, this session on effective MCQ design has been planned in a way where participants are going to actively participate in the next maybe 90 to 100 minutes, where we have designed some activities which could be either individual or in small groups. So is this covered? This is covered. Elements not covered. Basics of MCQ. Yeah. So when we talk about the structure of MCQ, according to Clegg and Cashin, MCQ contains of 3 elements. Okay, it has a STEM item, which is a problem statement. It has distractors and a correct option. And a sample MCQ, the question in NAAC's SSR, how does the institution ensure that the campus environment promotes motivation, development, satisfaction, and performance improvement of the students? Relates to the criteria, and 4 criteria are given in the option. So here we have the item STEM, which is the question asked or the problem statement. Out of 4 options, we have 3 distractors, which are put up in color yellow, and we have 1 correct answer. Okay, so this is how is the structure of MCQ. Now, before we go ahead, let us quickly consider some of the pros and cons of MCQs. We are all aware, so we are not going to spend much time on this, but just to bring our attention to the advantages and disadvantages of having MCQs in the test. So we know that it is very quick and easy to score a test which is based on MCQs. And nowadays it's all, we are using computers and softwares to develop MCQs. So it's very, very quick and easy. And if MCQs designed well, can tap different cognitive levels and not just lower levels of thinking. Identification of common errors, yes. As teachers, tests are always a way to tell you which are the areas where your students aren't performing well. So MCQs too can become a source of, if there is any, if most of your students have answered a particular question wrong, then it is an indication to the teacher that maybe they lack some kind of understanding with regards to that topic. Then objective grading. There is no scope for teacher bias or assessor bias. Okay, and it is fast to answer compared to essay type test. And the con side of MCQ is item can be misrepresented. If there is ambiguity in the item statement or the problem statement, then it may not be understood well by the student or the one who is answering the test. And though the student knows the right answer, may not be able to give the correct answer. And one challenge about MCQs that it is time consuming and it is an engaging exercise for teachers to construct a meaningful test. Of course, it is not easy to tap higher levels of cognition. And if students do not know the content well, they may end up guessing the answer. So it encourages guesswork. Now, as participants, as we said earlier, we have planned some activities. Now, this is one activity where you'll be engaged at individual level. It is basically into 2 phases. In the first phase, we have developed a reading material, compiled, put together. We will share that reading material on WhatsApp group, and we give you 10 minutes. We want all of you to spend time reading how can, what can help us develop better stems and plausible distractors in MCQs. So this reading material is based on that. Basically, guideline for developing better stems and plausible distractors. And once we spend some time, around 8 to 10 minutes reading this material, then we come back and we have some MCQs which we will display on slides. And having understood what are the guidelines of better stems and plausible distractors, we will try and identify as a group which are strong MCQs and which are weak ones.
So I have already shared the document on the WhatsApp group that we've created. We request you to go into the WhatsApp group and access that document. Just read it through. It's not a very long document, but yeah, it's got some point pointers with respect to stems and distractors and MCQs. Anybody who's not joined the group yet, I'm posting the link one more time here. Request you to join the group, and I'll share the document one more time. I hope you're all able to access the document that I have shared. Any problem in accessing the document?
No, ma'am, we are able.
Nice participants, if you interact, if you respond to us, either by unmuting yourself or you can write in the chat box so that we know that, we are on the same plane and the session is going on smoothly. Thank you, Shauri. We have our alumnus here as a participant. It is always nice to have our alumni members wherever, in whichever platform we are at.
It's nice to see you all too, ma'am. Megha ma'am, Ruchi ma'am.
Same here, Shauri. We reciprocate the feelings.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hope all of you are engaging with the material. So now we give you around 8 minutes more. It's 11:40, 11:48. We are in the meeting room, but we'll call for your attention here.
If there are if you come across any doubts or anything, any questions that come to your mind, we urge you to make note of those. We urge you to make note of those questions or doubts, and we can all think about it. We can all address them here once everybody's finished reading it.
We take 1 more minute. So, teachers, I hope we give you sufficient time to go through the reading material. Having gone through the material and having understood some guidelines on designing STEM and plausible distractors for MCQ, we hope you'll be in a position to judge quality of some MCQs that we will now display on slide. And we want you to pay close attention to STEM as well as distractors and identify which MCQs are good, that is strong ones, and which are weak ones. And supplement your answer with some reasons. If you say strong, why? And if you say weak, why? And I hope that most of the participants would want to engage in this exercise. They look forward to your interaction. So here we present the first MCQ. You may unmute yourself or write in the chat box. First is this MCQ a strong one or is it weak? And why? You can just give 1 or 2 reasons. Yeah, anybody? What do you think, teachers? Do you find any problem in this MCQ? Or look at the STEM, look at the distractors. Is the STEM making complete meaning? Okay, we have some responses. It says that it's a weak MCQ. The alternatives are not framed in the same format. So Sanskruti, fine. I would like to know which format are you referring to?
Ma'am, the first two alternatives, they start with the words like need for a teacher to continuously burn a candle, need for continuous. So the next two alternatives could also have been framed in the same manner.
Okay, that is why you say it's a weak MCQ.
I mean, that's one of the reasons.
All right. Negative wording. Arvind says negative wording. Because that word cannot is come in the, okay, so cannot is come in the quote and not the question. So these are two different things. All right, it is interesting. We have a different take on this. Anyway, see, teachers, there is no always the answer. We all think in different ways. So according to us, it is a strong MCQ, and the reason is this. But we accept all that you said. If Sanskriti says that, the questions, the alternatives could have been framed in the same format. I think if that was possible, Sanskriti, you could have strengthened this MCQ further. Okay, so absolutely agree with Sanskriti. Arvind, as far as your answer is concerned, cannot is a part of the quote and not the item statement. I mean the question that is posed. The question that is posed is what does this quote signify? So to that extent, we can consider that part. So why we consider it as a good MCQ? Because question is presents a definite, it's a definite meaning, and it is free of irrelevant material, right? And the words used in the distractors sound important, okay? And thus we consider this as a strong MCQ. Let's have a look at the next one. Tell us whether this MCQ is a good quality MCQ or not so good. Yeah? Who would like to answer this? Anybody? Okay. Ma'am Nayak says not so good. Reason why it is not so good?
One, the framing of the question stem, MCQ stem, the framing of the MCQ stem is not in the form of a complete sentence. It could have been framed like which of the following are the three components of the biotic factors?
Okay,
like
fine.
that, and that is the reason why it is like that. It's a weak MCQ in terms of framing of the question itself.
All right. Is there any other reason? Why? I agree, it's a weak MCQ. But is there any other reason that it's a weak MCQ?
Yes, because we have actually put in abiotic factors here directly in the answer statement,
Absolutely.
which can be easily eliminated by the learner.
Yeah, right. Good answer.
Thank you.
So the responses here aren't plausible and homogeneous. Air, water, sunlight, rocks, they are all abiotic factors. And thus, it's a weak MCQ. Students will be very easily be able to guess what is the correct answer. And such kind of MCQs should be definitely avoided by the teachers. Distractors have to play its role of distracting student. Which of the following is not a goal of research? 4 options. Now you have to tell us, how is this MCQ? This is a simple one to identify based on the guidelines given. Yes, Ma'am Sanskriti, right? Negative wording. Then could somebody help us or tell us that how could it be worded? If we don't want this to be worded as, or which of the following is not a goal of research? We don't want question to have a negative word in it. Then what could be a different way of wording it? Okay, maybe we can put it as all of the following are goals of research except. Okay. What is the main aim of interdisciplinary research? And 4 options. Your take on this MCQ.
Yes, we have some answers in the chat box.
I think Ma'am Sanskruti has written it's a strong one. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. And the reason why it's a strong one?
Ma'am, because the MCQ STEM is pretty perfect. Like it is a very direct question, and the alternatives are also something that you cannot, nothing can be eliminated very easily. So I felt that is why it is strong.
Good, right. The STEM is meaningfully worded, and the options also sound important. And there is verbal association of all the 4 options, the distractors also with the STEM, and thus it is a strong one. Thank you, participants. We have some more examples, but requesting my colleague Ruchi to discuss those.
Yeah, so we take this forward. Please have a look and give your responses. Which of the following is the basis of diminishing marginal utility? If there are any commerce and economics teachers in the group, they will get it. That's right, weak MCQ. Could you also help us with why you think it's a weak MCQ? Options are unrelated, all right. That's right. It is a weak MCQ. And the reason for that is that the distractors are very, they're all over the place. They need to have some connect to the STEM. So it is a weak MCQ. Let's look at another one. According to the RTE Act, free and compulsory education to be provided to children of the following age group. Look at it in the terms of the STEM, the correct options, and the distractors. We may all have our subjective opinions on a question, on an MCQ, but it's okay to discuss, to bring it out in the forum and talk about it. Anybody would like to talk about this one? So if we look at the STEM here, it is a meaningful STEM. The options are fairly, the distractors are fairly distracting. They're doing their work. So according to us, this is a strong MCQ. The reason, another thing is that the options are arranged in a logical order. 4, 6, 7, and 8. If you look at the starting point of the age group, it's in a logical order. So according to us, this is a strong MCQ. 2 more MCQs to go. Here, who undertakes the responsibility of formulating the national policy on education in India? I'm sure you will get this. Is it a strong MCQ or a weak MCQ?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I think the question is weak
Yeah. Can
because
you?
the options are totally unrelated. For example, the answer is quite easy and it is directly there in the
Absolutely,
question.
absolutely. You're absolutely right. The above MCQ is a very weak MCQ because the distractors are not distracting enough. There is no amount of thinking that a child requires when answering this question. So there is only one correct option has a very strong association with the STEM. So therefore, it is a very weak MCQ. All right, the last one. What holds an important place in knowledge construction or understanding of a concept? Would anybody like to try this? Okay, so since we're running a little short on time, I'm just going to quickly get it over with. This is a strong MCQ. Knowledge construction, all the options given here can distract a child. It could be about information, it could be about data, experience, or interpretation. And the reason, one of the reasons we've got this item here is to tell you all that it's not necessarily about the length of the distractors. The distractors can be simple one-word answers also, but they can be strong if they are distracting the child enough. So that's the reason why this item is here on the slide. So I hope, are there any questions that we can address at this point of time? Any? Okay, you want to know the correct option to this? Experience is the correct answer. Learning experience.
Experience of the learner should hold an important place in knowledge construction. NCF 2005 says that learning should be built based on students' experience.
So any questions with respect to what is a good MCQ and what is probably not a good MCQ so far? Then we move to the next part of our workshop. Any doubts in the material that you've read? Anything that came up which you would like to bring to everybody's attention here? Okay, so I now request Megha to take over from here.
So Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives is a framework for teaching, learning, and educational achievement, which was established way back in 1956. It classifies cognitive objectives into hierarchy. That means the lower level objectives need to be achieved to achieve the higher order objectives. All right. So knowledge at each level is crucial for getting the abilities and skills of the next level. And this taxonomy is widely used by teachers, educators to structure their educational objectives and also design assessments. And that is why we have brought in Bloom's taxonomy in today's session. And Lauren Anderson, a former student of Bloom, along with David Carthole, they revisited the taxonomy and made some changes to the original version. And at the core of this revision is use of verb form. Instead of noun, a verb form is used. This verb form helps learner to better understand, get clarity of what is expected out of them. Okay, so this is the major change. And another change is in the higher order level of thought process, where evaluate comes after analyze, and the last stage is creating. Let's go to the next stage. So multiple choice questions are commonly criticized on the ground that they can only test lower order learning in students, that is recall and recognition type. However, this is only a misconception. MCQs can certainly test students' higher order thinking skills, which goes beyond memorizing, recall, and even comprehension. It can definitely include analysis, application, and evaluation of ideas. And in the next few slides, we would like to share some MCQs that we have designed at different levels of cognitive processing as per Bloom's taxonomy. And to walk you through the next few slides, I request my colleague, Dr. Mittal, to take over.
Yeah, thank you, Megha. So in the next few slides, we have a couple of questions catering to some of these levels. So the first one here, can everybody see this small dialog box that's coming about? Is it visible to, can I request the technical team of Valia College to help us with this? And getting this message here, please move this window away from the shared application. Am I supposed to do something on this? Is it visible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. I'll just talk to my technical team and get back on this.
Yeah, it's distracting, that's it.
Yes, yes, ma'am. It's a distractor.
Yeah, it is. It's a distractor of another level.
Correct, correct.
All right. So this is a question. I'm going to display two questions which cater to the first level of Bloom's taxonomy, whether we call it remembering under the new taxonomy or we call it knowledge. Identify the principle of management by Henry Fayol, which states that all persons working in an organization should have one specific goal and all efforts should be made for realization of this goal.
Ma'am, just a distractor. The technical team is asking you to share the screen again.
Again, all right, I'll do that. Yeah, I think the distractor is gone now. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right. So this is an MCQ, which yes, option 1 is the correct answer, unity of direction. But let us analyze why I'm placing this under knowledge or remembering level of the taxonomy. What is the student supposed to do here? What the student has to do is recall the different functions, basically recall the four principles that are mentioned as distractors, and see which description matches the different options. So he has to recall, he has to just recall what each of the principles says. And therefore, anything where any question which tests the recall capacity of a child is a knowledge or a remembering question. So therefore, I am placing this question as a remembering or knowledge question. There's another one here. Integrated crop management is best defined as a process that, and then there are 4 options. So again, I'm placing this as a remembering or a knowledge question because it is asking a student to give identify the best definition of integrated crop management. So if the child can recall the definition of integrated crop management, he or she will be able to pick the correct option. So these are 2 examples that I brought in here for remembering and knowledge. Any questions on this? Any doubts? We can also have recall kind of questions which test the knowledge of terms in a subject, knowledge of people as to who gave this theory or who gave this law, places, time, specifically with respect to history and geography kind of subjects. Knowledge of methods and procedures is something again that will be placed under knowledge, because it's only a recall kind of a question where the child has to recall what he remembers. Knowledge of principles, as in statement of principles, and knowledge of any specific facts will all fall under remembering and knowledge. So that's about knowledge and remembering. We now move to the second level, which is understanding or comprehending. So here I have got two questions. Let us look at these questions and see if we can understand why have I placed it under the second level of understanding or comprehending. The most compelling reason for every higher education institution to apply for NAAC accreditation is, and then there are the 4 distractors. So can somebody tell me why would I have placed it? Can it be placed under knowledge or remembering? Why is it that I've placed it under understanding and not under knowledge? Can anybody think about this? Well, my reason, our reason for doing this is that it's not stated anywhere as to which is the most important reason why institutions should be going for NAAC accreditation. It's only when you go through the entire process that you understand that this is why it is important. It is important because it helps an institution examine its own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Everything else is on the periphery. This is the core reason. By your own self-assessment, you present a report. So unless you go through the entire process, you will not understand why you should be going, why an institution should be going for NAAC accreditation. And that's my reason why I have put it here under understanding or comprehending. The next one. Which human activity contributes the most in decreasing oxygen levels present in the atmosphere? Yeah, is there a response? So I invite you all to look at question number 1 and 2, both the questions here, and understand why they go into the second level of the hierarchy, which is the understanding or the comprehending part. It's moving away from knowledge and moving towards understanding. Any questions on this? Why understanding? Why is this understanding? Why am I placing this question under understanding?
Student need to understand the meaning of each term and correlate with the question. How does the oxygen level depends on deforestation?
Yes. So for each of the distractors, what does each distractor do to the level of oxygen present in the atmosphere? Some options may increase the level of CO2 without actually reducing the total amount of oxygen. But the density of CO2 will rise, the proportion will vary. So there is a different level of engagement with the question for the learner, and therefore I have placed it under understanding and comprehension. So let me move further. So the objective is that as you saw in our first slide, our objective is to take you through 3 levels, which is knowledge, understanding, and the third one, which is application. So let's look at the application questions. Again, commerce teachers can understand this. A commerce teacher asks students to form small groups and conduct a survey to understand the challenges faced by small-scale industries. The two principles most prominently used in this exercise are, these are principles of teaching that are used here. So there are 2 principles that are coming in here, and the student has 1 activity, 2 principles. Just the knowledge of principles may not be enough for the child to answer this question. Not only has the child to know all these principles and the statement of these principles, what do they imply? So that's one level that the student has to know, and the other level is to understand what's happening in the activity. It's an application of a principle, and not one principle, application of 2 principles. So therefore, I have placed it under application. Any thoughts on this? Anybody? I have brought in one more example for application. This is a math. This is a economics related problem. A worker produces 100 units per hour for 10 hours. In the 11th hour, his output drops to 90 units per hour, and in the 15th hour, it drops to 80 units per hour. This is an example of, so again, this is an application of a principle. Any questions on this? Any thoughts, anything that's coming to your mind? If no, then I will move forward because we have a very interesting activity lined up, and we don't want to take away time from that activity. So although we only want to, today's session, we only want to engage in knowledge, understanding, and application kind of questions, but there are higher levels in the hierarchy, and I want you to just quickly have a look at some questions that I've framed for the higher levels as well, so that you know what are the possibilities. I mean, we don't need to stop here. If there's scope, then we can even move higher in the hierarchy. Okay, application questions can be built up on application of principles, application of laws, and or their exceptions, interpretation of cause-effect relationships, justification of practices. Typically, the types that we say give reasons for, this can be converted into application questions. Classifications, finding the odd man out, common ideas, analogies, and completing the series. These are all application kind of questions. Goes very well for maths and science kind of subjects. Slightly challenging to frame in humanities and social sciences. Okay, now this is an example of analysis. What is an important difference between monopoly and monopolistic markets? And then you have 4 options. Why is this an analysis question? Anyone? What is the analysis that the student is expected to engage in a question like this?
the concept of monopoly and monopolistic competition should be very clear, because there's clever use of the terminologies in the first part, monopoly.
Yeah,
And
so each and every distractor has to be analyzed with the probably a lens. Yeah. So that is taking learner to the level of analysis. Find the odd man out, a math problem. I must say it's relatively easier to make analysis, application, and these higher level of problems in pure subjects like math and science. But still, we can always think of different ways in which we can create these MCQs. Different levels of thinking, different types of thinking that we can bring in for the learner. Again, this is an analysis kind of question. Any thoughts? Any questions? Before I move to evaluating kind of questions. All right. Let me move to evaluating kind of questions. So evaluating is not how we understand where we are evaluating the child, where we are evaluating this learner. Evaluating is where the learner is evaluating a particular concept, a particular idea, whatever. The learner is put in a position of evaluation. So here, which of the following is the best example of classical conditioning? Now, there are 4 options which are all about conditioning. And there are different types of conditioning theories in psychology: classical conditioning, operant conditioning. So 3 of these are examples of operant conditioning, and 1 is an example of classical conditioning. But again, there are no watertight compartments between classical and operant conditioning. They can run across each other. So therefore, here the student has to know these 2 theories and find out which is the best example, which is very high on classical conditioning. So the child is engaged in the activity of evaluating the options and which is the best. Likewise, in the next question, in which of the following teaching strategies is the learner most active cognitively? I'll just go through the options here. Conducting an experiment in the science lab, watching a video of a science experiment, watching the teacher perform an experiment, or reading the details of the experiment in the textbook. So in which of these is the learner most active cognitively? Again, in all of these, the learner is active cognitively, but in which one is he most active? So which of the following 4 options is very high on cognitive engagement? So that is evaluating or evaluation kind of questions. And the top, right at the top of the pyramid was creating, which is which we are finding difficult to bring creating into multiple choice questions, because no matter what we try, it ends up being either an evaluation or an analysis. So creating is something that is difficult in CQ items, but we can reach the other levels of Bloom's taxonomy when we make our MCQs. So with this, we now move to our second activity, makeup. Yeah, so we have the next activity which we planned using breakout rooms. Yeah, so so what I'm going to do is we will break out the entire group into breakout rooms. But while we are doing that, I'm posting the next set of reading material on our WhatsApp group. This activity is about you framing questions for 3 levels: knowledge, comprehension, and application, based on this common reading material that we are forwarding on the group. So while you start reading it, we will give you further instructions. We want you to start reading the
So hello, good afternoon everyone. So just before we start with the next session, we can have 2-minute break, and I'm going to end this meeting, and after 2 minutes we will restart this meeting with the same link, requesting all of you to join back.
Dr. Bhagishri, I think
Yes,
Sir has had a word with your technical
sir,
team.
sir, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we have to now leave the meeting. You will end, sir will end the meeting.
Sir will end.
Join
Yeah.
again. We have to
Yes,
join.
we have to
Request
rejoin.
all participants to please join again immediately in 2 minutes. The moment the
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. You have to use the same links.
Yes.
Yeah. Sandeep sir, you can end the meeting.